Gabriel Ashford hadn't thought about Mrs. Iris young in years. Not until she walked into the conference room of his waterfront restaurant Empire headquarters with a nervous smile and a portfolio clutched against her chest. He was standing by the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline when his assistant brought her in. The meeting was supposed to be about a potential collaboration with a culinary education program, something his PR team insisted would be good for community relations. Gabriel had built Young Hospitality Group from nothing, turning a single food truck into a chain of 15 upscale restaurants across the Pacific Northwest. And at 32, he was constantly being pushed into philanthropic ventures that would soften his reputation as a ruthless businessman. But when he turned around and saw her, something shifted in his chest. She was older now, obviously, her dark hair threaded with silver at the temples, but those warm brown eyes were exactly as he remembered them. She had been his home economics teacher in 8th grade, the one who had taught him that cooking could be more than just survival, that it could be art and passion and a way to connect with people. "Mr. Young," she said formally, extending her hand. "Thank you for taking this meeting." He shook her hand, noting the calluses on her fingers. "Mrs. Ashford," he said, then paused. "Or is it still Mrs. Ashford?" A flicker of something crossed her face. "It's Miss Ashford now, actually. I went back to my maiden name after my divorce 5 years ago." Gabriel gestured for her to sit at the conference table, dismissing his assistant with a subtle nod. When they were alone, he leaned back in his chair and studied her. "You don't remember me, do you?" She tilted her head, confusion evident. "I'm sorry, Gabriel Young. Though back then, most people called me Gabe. I was in your home economics class at Lincoln Middle School. This would have been about 19 years ago." Recognition dawned slowly across her features, and then her eyes widened. Gabriel, little Gabriel who used to stay after class to help clean up. Who made that incredible chocolate soufflé for the final project. He felt a surprising warmth at being remembered. "That's me, though I'm not so little anymore." "No, you certainly aren't," she laughed, and the sound was lighter than her speaking voice, almost musical. "I read about you in the paper, of course. The food truck to restaurant mogul story, but I never connected that it was you. You've done so well for yourself." "You're the reason I'm sitting here," Gabriel said honestly. "That class changed my life. Before that, cooking was just something I did because my mom worked double shifts and someone had to feed my little sister. You made me see it differently." Gabriel watched as emotion flickered across her face. "That means more than you know. I've been teaching for 27 years now, and sometimes I wonder if I'm really making a difference. You did for me." He paused, then shifted back to business mode, though it felt oddly difficult. "So tell me about this program you're proposing." Gabriel spent the next hour listening as she outlined her vision for a culinary mentorship program that would connect at-risk youth with professional chefs. The students would get hands-on training, life skills, and exposure to career possibilities they might never have considered. She had statistics, testimonials from other cities where similar programs had succeeded, and a passion in her voice that reminded him exactly why she had been such an influential teacher. "The thing is," she said, leaning forward, "these kids need more than just recipes. They need someone to believe in them. They need to see that there's a path forward, even when their home lives are chaotic or difficult. I've taught long enough to know which students are cooking because they have to, because they're the ones keeping their families fed. Those are the ones who need this most." Gabriel felt something twist in his chest. She could have been describing him at 13, angry at the world, resentful of the responsibility thrust upon him, but finding something like peace in the rhythm of chopping vegetables and the chemistry of combining flavors. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "A partnership." access to your restaurant kitchens during off hours, maybe some of your staff willing to volunteer as mentors, and funding, of course. I have a grant that covers some costs, but not enough to really make this work." She named a figure that was honestly modest given the scope of what she was proposing. Gabriel stood and walked back to the window. The September afternoon sun was glinting off Elliott Bay, and he could see a ferry making its way across the water. Money wasn't the issue. He could write the check right now without feeling it, but he was thinking about something bigger. "I'll fund the entire program," he said, turning back to face her. "But I want to be involved, not just writing checks. I want to mentor these kids myself, be in the kitchen with them." Gabriel saw surprise flash across her face. "You do that? Mr. Young, I'm sure you're incredibly busy." "Gabriel," he interrupted. "And yes, I'm busy, but this matters. You taught me that cooking could be more than just putting food on the table. Let me help you teach that to the next generation." She smiled then, genuinely and fully, and Gabriel realized with a start that she was beautiful. Not in the polished, calculated way of the women who usually circulated in his social sphere, but in a natural, unguarded way that made something in his chest tighten. "Then, we have a deal," Gabriel said, extending her hand again. This time when he shook it, he held on just a moment longer than necessary. Over the next 2 weeks, Gabriel found himself thinking about her more than was probably appropriate. They exchanged emails about program logistics, toured potential kitchen spaces, and had 2 more meetings to hammer out details. She was professional, organized, and passionate about the work, but there was also a warmth to her that he found himself craving. He told himself it was just nostalgia, just the comfort of reconnecting with someone who had been important to him at a formative time. But then, they had their first planning dinner at one of his restaurants, and he realized it was more than that. Gabriel sat across from her at a corner table at Ember, his flagship restaurant in downtown Seattle. He had cleared the restaurant for a private tasting, wanting to show her the kind of food his students might eventually learn to create. Course after course arrived, each one a carefully constructed blend of flavors and textures, and he watched her face light up with each bite. "This is incredible," she said, savoring a piece of butter poached halibut with charred lemon and herb oil. The way the brightness of the lemon cuts through the richness of the butter, and those crispy capers add just the right amount of salt and texture. "Gabriel, you've become a true artist." "I had a good teacher," he said, and meant it. She set down her fork and looked at him seriously. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "What happened after 8th grade? I remember you were dealing with a lot at home. Your mother working all the time, raising your sister. I used to worry about you." Gabriel took a sip of wine, considering how much to share. "My mom got sick the summer before high school. Cancer. She fought it for 2 years, but she died when I was 16. My sister was 11. We went into foster care briefly, but I petitioned for emancipation and custody of my sister. Worked 3 jobs, finished high school, and kept us afloat." "Gabriel," she breathed, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I had no idea. I'm so sorry." "Don't be. We made it through. My sister just finished medical school, actually. She's doing her residency in pediatrics in Portland, and I built this." He gestured around the restaurant. "Turns out that scared, angry kid who cooked because he had to actually loved it enough to make a career of it." "You're remarkable," she said softly. The way she was looking at him made Gabriel's breath catch. There was admiration there, yes, but also something warmer, something that made him want to reach across the table and take her hand. Instead, he cleared his throat and changed the subject. "What about you? You mentioned a divorce." A shadow crossed her face. "Married at 23 to my college boyfriend. We both wanted different things, it turned out." He wanted a wife who would stay home, have dinner on the table at 6, be content with a quiet, small life. I wanted to keep teaching, keep growing, keep making a difference. The resentment built up over 20 years until we both realized we'd been making each other miserable. Any kids? No, that was part of the problem. He wanted them desperately. I didn't. That probably makes me sound terrible. Gabriel shook his head. It makes you sound honest. Not everyone wants the same things. What about you? She asked. I find it hard to believe someone like you hasn't been snapped up by now, he laughed, but it sounded harsh even to his own ears. I've dated, had a couple of serious relationships, but building this empire took everything I had. Most women don't want to come second to a restaurant chain, and the ones who do often are more interested in the money than me. That must be lonely. The simple empathy in her voice broke something open in him. Yeah, he admitted, it is. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Gabriel realized that this, right here, was what he had been missing. Not just romance or physical connection, but this deep sense of being understood, of being seen for who he really was beneath the CEO persona. Tell me about the students we will be working with, he said, steering back to safer territory, her face animated immediately. I've already identified 12 teenagers who I think would be perfect for the program. They're all between 14 and 17, all dealing with challenging home situations. Some have parents working multiple jobs, some are in foster care. A couple are dealing with food insecurity themselves. But they all have something special, that spark that I remember seeing in you. Gabriel leaned forward. I want to meet them. Before we officially start the program, I want to talk to each one, understand their stories. I think that's a wonderful idea, she said. Though I should warn you, they might be intimidated by you at first. You're fairly famous in the restaurant world and you have this very intense presence. Do I? He raised an eyebrow. She blushed slightly and he found the color in her cheeks utterly charming. Yes, you're very focused, very commanding. It can be a little overwhelming. I'll try to tone it down, he said with a slight smile. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, she said quickly. It's just different from when you were 13. A lot has changed since then, clearly. There was a charge in the air between them now, something electric that Gabriel couldn't quite name. He knew he should let it go, should keep things professional. She was his former teacher, for God's sake, even if that had been nearly 2 decades ago. And they were going to be working together on this program. Getting involved would be complicated at best, disastrous at worst. But when she smiled at him across the table, her eyes warm and her guard momentarily down, Gabriel found himself thinking that maybe complicated wasn't so bad. The program officially launched 3 weeks later in the kitchen of his restaurant Sage, which was closed on Mondays. Gabriel had arranged for several of his sous chefs to volunteer as assistant mentors, but he planned to be there himself for every single session. The 12 students arrived nervous and unsure, clustering together in the gleaming commercial kitchen like they were afraid to touch anything. Gabriel understood. This world was foreign to them, all stainless steel and expensive equipment, so different from the cramped apartment kitchens most of them probably cooked in. Gabriel stood next to him at the front of the kitchen, clipboard in hand, making introductions. Everyone, this is Gabriel Young, the owner of Young Hospitality Group and the driving force behind this program. He's generously donated his time and resources to make this possible. Gabriel stepped forward, deliberately softening his posture. Hi, everyone. I know this might feel intimidating, but I want you to know something. When I was 14, I was exactly where you are, cooking out of necessity, not choice. Taking care of my family because I had to. This kitchen might look fancy, but the basics are the same as what you do at home. And by the end of this program, you're going to feel as comfortable here as you do in your own kitchens. Maybe more. He saw a few of the students relax slightly, saw the way they looked at him with new interest. Gabriel caught his eye and gave him an approving nod that warmed him from the inside out. Today we're starting simple, Gabriel continued. We're going to make stock. It's the foundation of so many dishes, and it's also an exercise in patience and attention. Cooking isn't always about flash and fire. Sometimes it's about letting things develop slowly, coaxing out flavors over time. They spent the next 3 hours breaking down chickens, learning knife skills, discussing the holy trinity of mirepoix. Gabriel moved through the students, correcting grips, demonstrating techniques, answering questions. And all the while he was aware of her presence, the way she moved through the kitchen checking in with each student, offering encouragement, asking thoughtful questions. There was a girl named Maya, 16 and in foster care, who had the same fierce concentration Gabriel remembered having at that age. A boy named David who cracked jokes to hide his nervousness. A quiet student named Lily who barely spoke but whose hands moved with instinctive grace as she chopped vegetables. By the end of the session, the kitchen smelled incredible, rich and savory, and the students were talking excitedly among themselves. Gabriel gathered them together for closing remarks. "Same time next week," he said. "Come hungry. We're going to make something you can actually eat, not just stock." As the students filed out, many of them stopping to thank him, Gabriel found himself standing beside her, both of them surveying the organized chaos of the kitchen that would need to be cleaned. "That was amazing," she said, turning to him with shining eyes. "The way you connected with them made them feel comfortable. Gabriel, you're a natural at this." "I meant what I said. I was them. I remember what it felt like to be scared and overwhelmed and trying to figure out how to survive. If I can make it easier for even one of them, it's worth it." She reached out and touched his arm just briefly, but the contact sent a jolt through him. "Thank you for doing this. It means everything." They stood there for a moment, the kitchen quiet now except for the hum of refrigeration units, and Gabriel felt the pull between them intensify. He wanted to lean in, to close the distance, to see if her lips were as soft as they looked. But he held back, aware of the complications, of the fact that they barely knew each other as adults, of the professional boundaries they should maintain. "Let me take you to dinner," he said instead. "A proper one, not a work meeting. I'd like to get to know you better, Gabriel, outside of all this." Her breath caught and he saw the war playing out across her face. Temptation versus caution. "Finally," she said, "I'd like that." They went to a small Italian place in Fremont, the kind of neighborhood restaurant that Gabriel loved, where the food was unpretentious but exceptional. Gabriel had changed out of her teaching clothes into a simple navy dress that brought out the warmth in her eyes, and Gabriel found himself unable to stop looking at her. "Tell me about your life now," he said after they had ordered. "Outside of teaching." She laughed. "It's not terribly exciting. I have a small house in Greenwood that I'm slowly renovating myself. I have a garden where I grow vegetables and herbs. I read a lot, take walks around Green Lake, have dinner with friends. It's a quiet life, but I like it." "It sounds perfect," Gabriel said honestly. "What about you?" "What does the head of a restaurant empire do when he's not working?" Gabriel considered. "Honestly, I don't have much of a life outside of work. I go to the gym, I read industry publications, I visit my restaurants, check on operations. My sister calls me a workaholic. Is she right? Probably." He paused. "I think I buried myself in work after my mom died. It was the one thing I could control, the one place where effort directly translated to results, and then it became a habit. Now I'm not sure I know how to be any other way." "That sounds exhausting," she said gently. It is." The admission surprised him. He didn't usually talk about this, about the bone-deep weariness that sometimes overtook him, the sense that he was constantly chasing something just out of reach. Their food arrived, and they ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. Then Gabriel said, "Can I ask you something? About back then when I was your student, of course. Did you know how bad things were for me? I tried to hide it, but I always wondered if you could tell." Her expression grew sad. "I suspected. You had that look that kids get when they're carrying too much responsibility. And you were always so careful about the food we made in class, like you couldn't bear to waste a single ingredient. I tried to help where I could. I'd pack up extra supplies sometimes, claim I had too much, send it home with you." Gabriel's throat tightened. "I thought I was being slick, accepting those without it being obvious charity. You were being proud and brave and doing your best to survive. I wish I could have done more." "You did exactly enough," Gabriel said firmly. "You gave me something to believe in, a skill that turned into a passion that turned into this life. That's not nothing." She reached across the table and took his hand, the gesture natural and warm. "Look at you now. You've built something incredible. You should be proud." "I am," he said, turning his hand to intertwine their fingers. "But it's been a lonely climb." "Maybe you don't have to be lonely anymore," she said softly. The moment stretched between them, loaded with possibility. Gabriel paid the check and they walked out into the cool October evening. The street was quiet, lined with trees whose leaves were just beginning to turn gold and red. "Can I walk you to your car?" Gabriel asked. "I took the bus," she admitted. "My car's in the shop. Then let me drive you home." They walked to where Gabriel had parked his Tesla, and he opened the door for her, catching a hint of her perfume as she slid into the passenger seat. Something floral and subtle that suited her perfectly. The drive to Greenwood took 20 minutes, and they talked the whole way, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Gabriel told her about his sister, Sophie, and how proud he was of her. She talked about her favorite students over the years, the ones who had gone on to do remarkable things. When they pulled up in front of her house, a charming craftsman with a porch light that cast a warm glow, Gabriel didn't want the evening to end. "Thank you for dinner," she said, not moving to get out of the car. "Thank you for the company," he replied. They sat there for a moment, the tension building, and then Gabriel made a decision. He leaned across the console, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and kissed her gently. Her lips were soft, and she tasted like the tiramisu they had shared for dessert. She made a small sound in the back of her throat and kissed him back, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "I've been wanting to do that all night," Gabriel admitted. "I've been wanting you to," she said, then seemed to catch herself. "But Gabriel, we should talk about this. You were my student, the age difference, the fact that we're working together." "I was your student 19 years ago," Gabriel said firmly. "I'm a grown man now, and you're a beautiful, intelligent woman who I very much want to get to know better. The age difference is what, 14 years? That's nothing. And as for working together, we're both professionals. We can handle it." She bit her lip, clearly wrestling with herself. "I don't want to complicate the program. These kids need this." "The program won't be affected," Gabriel promised. "I won't let anything interfere with that, but Gabriel, I haven't felt this way about anyone in a long time. Maybe ever. I think this could be something real." "I think so too," she whispered, "and that terrifies me." "Why?" "Because you're this successful, driven, powerful man, and I'm just a middle school teacher with a modest life. Our worlds are so different." Gabriel cupped her face in his hand, his thumb stroking her cheek. "Our worlds are exactly the same. We both care about helping kids. We both understand what it's like to fight for what we want. And none of the success or money or any of it means anything if I'm alone. I like who I am when I'm with you." She turned her face to kiss his palm. "Take this slow with me. I haven't dated in years and I don't want to mess this up." "As slow as you need," Gabriel said, though inside he was already sure about her in a way that should have been frightening but instead felt like coming home. They kissed again, longer this time, and then she reluctantly pulled away and got out of the car. Gabriel watched until she was safely inside before driving back to his downtown condo, his mind spinning with possibilities. The next 6 weeks fell into a comfortable pattern. Every Monday, the mentorship program met, and Gabriel worked side by side teaching the students everything from basic knife skills to complex sauce reductions. The kids were thriving, growing more confident each week, and several had expressed interest in pursuing culinary careers. And twice a week, Gabriel had dates. Sometimes they were traditional, dinner and a movie, a concert at Benaroya Hall. Other times they were simple, walking around Pike Place Market on a Saturday morning, cooking dinner together at her house, sitting on her porch drinking wine and talking until late into the night. Gabriel learned that she was funny, with a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard and made him laugh more than he had in years. She was well-read, opinionated about literature and politics, and passionate about social justice. She was terrible at mini-golf, which they discovered on a date that ended with them both laughing so hard they could barely breathe. She sang along to the radio in the car, off-key but enthusiastic. She was terrible at hiding her emotions, everything she felt playing out across her face. And Gabriel fell for her, hard and fast and completely. She seemed to be falling too, though she was more cautious about it. She would sometimes get a look on her face like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop, like she couldn't quite believe this was real. It was early December, after a program session where the students had successfully prepared a 3-course meal, when things shifted between them. They had stayed late to clean the kitchen, working in comfortable synchronization that came from weeks of collaboration. "The kids did amazing tonight," Gabriel said, putting away the last of the mixing bowls. "Did you see Maya's confidence when she plated that dish? She's come so far." "She reminds me of you," Gabriel said, wiping down the counter. "That same fierce determination." Gabriel caught her around the waist as she passed, pulling her close. "Come home with me tonight." He felt her tense slightly in his arms. They had been taking things slow, as she had requested, limiting physical contact to heated kisses that left them both wanting more. But Gabriel was tired of holding back, tired of the careful distance they maintained. "Gabriel," she said softly, not pulling away but not quite leaning in either. "I'm not asking for anything you're not ready for," he said, looking into her eyes. "But I want to wake up next to you. I want to fall asleep with you in my arms. I want more of you, Gabriel, as much as you're willing to give." She was quiet for a long moment, her hands resting on his chest. Then she said, "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of this being too good to be true. Of you realizing I'm just ordinary, that I don't fit into your world. Of getting my heart broken." Gabriel tightened his arms around her. "You're not ordinary. You're extraordinary. And my world is just restaurants and stress and endless work unless you're in it. Then it becomes something more. As for your heart, I'll guard it like it's my own, because I'm pretty sure it is." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "When did you become such a romantic?" "About 6 weeks ago, when I kissed you for the first time and realized I was falling in love with you." Her breath caught. "You love me." "I love you," Gabriel confirmed, the words feeling both monumental and utterly natural. "I think I've been falling for you since you walked into my conference room with that portfolio and that nervous smile." "I love you too," she whispered. "God help me, I love you so much it scares me." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, pouring everything he felt into it. When they broke apart, she was smiling. "Take me home," she said. His condo was a penthouse overlooking the water, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture, and Gabriel felt suddenly nervous about bringing her there. It was so clearly the home of someone wealthy, so different from her cozy craftsman with its wood floors and handmade quilts. But she walked in and went straight to the windows, looking out at the lights of the city reflecting off the dark water of Puget Sound. "This view is incredible." Gabriel came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I bought this place 5 years ago. It was supposed to be a symbol of success, proof that I had made it. But it's always felt cold like a hotel room, until now." She turned in his arms. "Gabriel, I need you to understand something. This, your money, your success, none of that is why I'm here. If you worked in a food truck and lived in a studio apartment, I would still love you. You know that, right?" "I know," he said, and realized he did. She had known him when he was just a scared kid with a talent for cooking. She had seen value in him before any of this existed. "That's one of the things I love about you." They moved to the bedroom, and Gabriel was nervous in a way he hadn't been in years. This mattered more than any of the casual relationships he had had before. This was the woman he loved, the woman he was starting to imagine a future with, and he wanted everything to be perfect. But the nervousness faded as they undressed each other slowly, as he laid her down on his bed and kissed every inch of her skin, as she arched beneath him and whispered his name like a prayer. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies and rhythms, and afterward they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "Stay," he murmured into her hair. "Not just tonight, stay with me, move in. Let's stop pretending we want to be apart." She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "That's fast. I'm 32 years old. I've dated enough to know when something is right. This is right, Gabriel, you and me. I don't want to waste time being cautious when I could be building a life with you." "I'm 46, she said quietly. "I'm set in my ways. I like my house, my routine, my independence. I don't know if I'm ready to give that up." Gabriel sat up, pulling her with him. "Then don't keep your house. Hell, I'll help you renovate it and we can split our time between there and here. I'm not asking you to give up your independence. I'm asking you to share your life with me." "What if we're rushing things?" she asked, but he could see the hope in her eyes. "Then we slow down." "But Gabriel, I need you to know that this isn't a fling for me. I'm all in. I want the future, the commitment, the whole thing, with you." She kissed him, soft and sweet. "I'm all in too, and yes, let's try living together. But slowly, okay? I'll stay here a few nights a week. You'll stay at my place a few nights, and we'll see how it goes." "Deal," Gabriel said, pulling her back down onto the bed and proceeding to show her exactly how much he loved that answer. Christmas came, and Gabriel spent it with his sister Sophie, who was visiting from Portland for a week. He had been nervous about introducing her to Gabriel, but Sophie took one look at them together and pulled him aside with a huge grin. "She makes you happy," Sophie said simply. "Like genuinely, deep down happy. I've never seen you like this." "She does," Gabriel agreed, watching Gabriel laugh at something his sous chef Marco had said. They were all gathered at Ember for a staff holiday party, and Gabriel fit in seamlessly, charming everyone with her warmth and genuine interest in their lives. "She's also age-appropriate, emotionally available, and not after your money," Sophie continued. "You realize she's basically a unicorn, right?" Gabriel laughed. "I'm aware." "Don't screw this up," Sophie said seriously. "You deserve to be happy, big brother, and she's good for you. I can already see it." He didn't plan to screw it up. In fact, he was already thinking about rings, about proposals, about the rest of their lives. But he forced himself to be patient, to let things develop naturally, to give Gabriel the time she needed to feel secure in their relationship. They settled into a rhythm over the winter months. Gabriel spent Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights at his condo, the other nights at her house in Greenwood. She made him breakfast in the mornings, terrible coffee that he drank anyway because she made it with love. He cooked dinner for her at night, elaborate meals that made her moan with pleasure. They grocery shopped together, bickered good-naturedly about everything from politics to the best way to organize a pantry, and fell more deeply in love with each passing day. The mentorship program was thriving. 3 of the students had expressed serious interest in culinary school, and Gabriel had privately set up scholarship funds for them, though he hadn't told Gabriel yet. He knew she would protest, would say it was too much, but he had more money than he could spend in a lifetime, and helping these kids felt like honoring the scared teenager he had been. It was Maya, the 16-year-old in foster care, who inadvertently pushed Gabriel toward a decision. She stayed late one Monday in February, helping clean up, and Gabriel could tell she wanted to talk about something. "What's on your mind?" he asked gently. "You and Miss Ashford," Maya said, not quite meeting his eyes. "Are you together? Like together?" Gabriel considered lying, maintaining professional boundaries, but decided these kids deserved honesty. "Yes, we're in a relationship." Maya nodded like that confirmed something. "I thought so. The way you look at each other, it's nice. You can tell you really care about each other." "We do." "Are you going to marry her?" The question caught Gabriel off guard. "I hope so." "Why do you ask?" Maya shrugged, suddenly looking very young. "I don't know. I guess I just don't see a lot of adults who seem really happy together. My parents split when I was little, and most of the foster families I have been with, the parents are just kind of tolerating each other. But you and Miss Ashford, you seem like you actually like being together. It gives me hope, I guess, that maybe real love actually exists." Gabriel felt his throat tighten with emotion. "It does exist. And Maya, you deserve to find it someday with someone who sees how incredible you are." She smiled shyly, then went back to work, but her words stayed with Gabriel. That night, after he drove Gabriel home and they were curled up on her couch, he brought it up. "Maya asked me today if we were getting married," he said. He felt Gabriel stiffen slightly in his arms. "What did you tell her?" "That I hoped so." He paused. "Is that okay, that I hope so?" Gabriel turned to face him, her expression serious. "Gabriel, we've only been together 5 months. I know. And I'm not proposing right now, though believe me, I want to, but I need to know that we're on the same page about the future. Because for me, this is it. You're it. I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you for the next 50 years. And if that's not what you want, I need to know now." She was quiet for a long moment, and Gabriel felt panic start to rise in his chest. Had he pushed too hard, too fast? Was he about to lose the best thing that had ever happened to him? Then she said, "I'm 46 years old. I've been married before and it didn't work. I'm set in my ways and I like my independence. I never thought I would want to get married again." Gabriel's heart sank, but then she continued. "But with you, everything is different. You don't try to change me or make me into something I'm not. You love me exactly as I am. You support my work, you share my values, you make me laugh and challenge me and make every day better. So yes, Gabriel, I want that future too. I want to marry you and build a life with you and wake up next to you for the next 50 years, however many we get." Relief and joy flooded through him. Yeah, she confirmed, smiling, "though I reserve the right to be terrified about it." He kissed her deeply. "I'll be terrified with you." They got engaged in April, on a Saturday morning at Pike Place Market. Gabriel had been planning something elaborate, a dinner at a fancy restaurant with rose petals and a string quartet, But when they were standing in front of the flower vendors, the sun streaming through the windows, Gabriel laughing at something a vendor had said, he realized that this moment was perfect exactly as it was. He got down on one knee right there in the middle of the market, pulling out the ring he had been carrying in his pocket for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. "Gabriel Ashford," he said, "you changed my life 19 years ago when you taught a scared kid that cooking could be art. And you changed it again 6 months ago when you walked into my office and reminded me that success means nothing without someone to share it with. Will you marry me?" She was crying, hands over her mouth, and Gabriel suddenly worried that maybe he had misjudged, maybe she wasn't ready, maybe he should have waited. But then she was nodding, pulling him to his feet, kissing him as the crowd around them erupted in applause. "Yes," she said against his lips. "Yes, yes, yes." The ring fit perfectly, a simple emerald-cut diamond on a platinum band, elegant and classic just like her. They stood there in the middle of the market, holding each other, and Gabriel felt happier than he could ever remember being. They decided on a small wedding in June, just close friends and family. Gabriel's sister Sophie flew in early to help with preparations, and she and Gabriel bonded immediately, much to Gabriel's delight. "I like her even more than I did at Christmas," Sophie told him the night before the wedding. "She's good for you, Gabe. She makes you softer, more open, you smile more. You actually relax sometimes. It's kind of freaky, honestly, seeing you be this happy." "I am happy," Gabriel said simply. "For the first time in a long time, I'm just purely, completely happy." The wedding was held in the garden of Gabriel's house in Greenwood, which they had spent the last 2 months renovating together. The ceremony was officiated by a friend of Gabriel's who was a retired teacher, and when Gabriel walked down the makeshift aisle between rows of chairs, wearing a simple ivory dress that took his breath away, Gabriel felt tears sting his eyes. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was his. The woman who had believed in him when he was just a kid with potential, who had come back into his life at exactly the right moment, who loved him not for his success or his money, but for who he was at his core. They exchanged vows they had written themselves. Gabriel promised to always support her passion for teaching, to never take her for granted, to cook her dinner every night for the rest of their lives. Gabriel promised to believe in his dreams, to remind him that success was measured in more than dollars, to love him through the good times and the hard times with equal devotion. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Gabriel kissed her like his life depended on it, and their small group of guests cheered. The reception was held at Ember, because of course it was. Gabriel's staff had outdone themselves, creating a menu that told the story of his and Gabriel's relationship through food. There were elevated versions of the dishes he had learned to make in her home economics class, complex reinterpretations of her favorite comfort foods, and a wedding cake that was a perfect replica of the chocolate souffle he had made for his 8th grade final project. Meyer and the other students from the mentorship program were there, dressed up and excited. They had insisted on helping with the service, wanting to be part of the celebration, and Gabriel had happily agreed. During dinner, Sophie stood to make a toast. "My brother has been taking care of people his whole life. First me, after our mom died, then his employees, his customers, his mentees. But I don't think anyone's ever really taken care of him until Gabriel came along. She sees him, the real him beneath all the success and the armor, and she loves that person. Gabe, I'm so happy you found each other," to the bride and groom. They danced late into the night, and Gabriel held his wife close, marveling at how much his life had changed in less than a year. "Happy," Gabriel murmured in his ear as they swayed to a slow song. "Incredibly," he said. You, more than I ever thought possible. They honeymooned in Italy, spending 2 weeks eating their way through Rome, Tuscany, and the Amalfi Coast. Gabriel took notes on dishes he wanted to try recreating, and Gabriel insisted they visit every local market and small family restaurant they could find. They held hands walking through ancient streets, made love in their hotel rooms with the windows open to let in the warm breeze, and talked about their future. "I want to expand the mentorship program," Gabriel said one night as they sat on their balcony overlooking the Tuscan countryside. "Take it to all my restaurants, reach more kids, maybe eventually franchise it, get other restaurateurs involved." "That would be amazing," Gabriel said. "You could change so many lives." "We could change them together," Gabriel corrected. "This is our project, our mission." "I can't do it without you," she kissed his cheek. "I was thinking about cutting back to part-time teaching next year. That way I could dedicate more time to the program." "Only if it's what you want," Gabriel said firmly. "Don't give up something you love because of me." "I'm not. I'm choosing something I love even more. This work, what we're building together, it feels important. More important than teaching home economics to kids who mostly just want an easy elective." They returned to Seattle tanned and happy, moving into Gabriel's condo officially since it had more space than her house in Greenwood. They kept her house, though, turning it into a sort of retreat where they would spend weekends when they needed to escape the city. The mentorship program expanded as they had discussed, and within a year, it was running at all 15 of Gabriel's restaurants, reaching over 100 students. Several major culinary publications did features on the program, and other chefs started reaching out to Gabriel, wanting to replicate the model. Maya graduated high school with honors and a full scholarship, courtesy of the fund Gabriel had established, to the Culinary Institute of America. She hugged them both fiercely at her graduation party, tears streaming down her face. "You changed my life," she said. "Both of you. I'm going to make you proud." "You already have," Gabriel assured her. Gabriel's chain continued to grow and thrive, but he was different now, more balanced. He left work at reasonable hours to have dinner with his wife. He took actual vacations. He laughed more, stressed less, and found joy in the simple rhythms of married life. It was a year and a half after their wedding when Gabriel approached him with news that would change everything. They were cooking dinner together in their condo kitchen, the space they had remodeled to be perfect for their shared love of food. "I need to tell you something," she said, and something in her tone made Gabriel set down his knife and give her his full attention. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." "At least I don't think so, but I'm pregnant." Gabriel felt the world tilt. "You're pregnant? But I thought you didn't want kids." "I didn't," Gabriel said, her hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. "Or I thought I didn't. But that was with my ex-husband, and that was a different life. Gabriel, when I think about having a baby with you, teaching them to cook, sharing our love with a whole new person, I'm not scared. I'm excited. Terrified, but excited." Gabriel pulled her into his arms, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby," she confirmed. "Are you okay with that? I know we never really discussed it." "Okay with it, Gabriel, I'm thrilled." Overwhelmed and already worried about everything that could go wrong, but thrilled. They stood there in their kitchen, holding each other, and Gabriel thought about how far he had come. From that scared 13-year-old kid cooking mac and cheese for his little sister, to a successful businessman who had everything he had ever dreamed of and more. But none of the restaurants or the money or the accolades meant as much as this moment, as the woman in his arms and the future they were building together. Their daughter, Iris, named after Gabriel in a way that made his wife cry happy tears, was born on a sunny September morning. She had Gabriel's dark hair and Gabriel's warm brown eyes, and she was perfect. Gabriel held her for the first time in the hospital room, this tiny person who was half him and half the woman he loved, and felt something fundamental shift in his chest. Sophie had been right all those years ago when she said he had been taking care of people his whole life. But this was different. This was his family, his wife and his daughter, and he would move mountains to keep them safe and happy. Gabriel watched from the hospital bed, exhausted but radiant. "Look at you," she said softly, already wrapped around her tiny finger. "Completely," Gabriel agreed, unable to tear his eyes away from his daughter's face. They brought Iris home to the condo, which they had transformed over the last few months into a space ready for a baby. Gabriel had insisted on painting the nursery himself, a soft yellow that looked like sunshine, and Gabriel had decorated it with framed illustrations from children's cookbooks. The first few months were exhausting in a way Gabriel hadn't anticipated. He was used to long hours and hard work, but nothing had prepared him for the relentless demands of a newborn. But they figured it out together, taking shifts for night feedings, supporting each other through the challenging moments, and marveling at every tiny milestone. Gabriel took a step back from day-to-day restaurant operations, hiring a chief operating officer to handle most of the administrative work. He wanted to be present, to not miss these early months of his daughter's life. His staff was supportive, and his restaurants continued to thrive even with his reduced involvement. When Iris was 6 months old, they had a small gathering at their house in Greenwood to celebrate. Sophie came up from Portland, bringing her new boyfriend who was a pediatric nurse at her hospital. The students from the original mentorship program, Maya included, all attended, cooing over the baby and congratulating them. Gabriel stood on the porch, holding Iris, watching Gabriel laugh with Sophie in the garden. The autumn sun was golden and warm, and he felt a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. Maya came to stand beside him. "You look happy." "I am," Gabriel said simply. "I'm starting my externship at a restaurant in New York next month," Maya told him. "A Michelin-starred place in Manhattan. I never thought I'd end up somewhere like that." "I'm not surprised at all," Gabriel said. "You're incredibly talented, Maya. You're going to do amazing things. Because you believed in me, both of you," she smiled at him. "I hope you know that you didn't just teach us to cook. You taught us that we could be more than our circumstances, that we could build the lives we wanted. That's worth more than any recipe." After she walked away, Gabriel realized that this was what success really looked like. Not the restaurants or the money or the recognition, but the lives touched, the people helped, the love shared. The scared kid he had been would barely recognize the man he had become, but Gabriel liked to think his younger self would be proud. Gabriel came over, standing on her toes to kiss his cheek. "What are you thinking about? How lucky I am," he said, shifting Iris to one arm so he could wrap the other around his wife. "That you walked into my office that day, that you gave me a second chance at knowing you, that you loved me enough to build this life with me." "I'm the lucky one," Gabriel said, leaning into him. "I get to spend my life with a man who's brilliant and kind and an amazing father, who looks at me like I hung the moon even when I'm covered in spit up and haven't slept in 3 days." "You do hang the moon," Gabriel said seriously, making her laugh. They stood there together as the sun set over Seattle, their daughter dozing in his arms, their friends and family gathered around them, and Gabriel felt a peace he had never experienced before. The journey from that lonely kid to this moment had been long and often difficult, but every hardship had been worth it to end up here. Over the next few years, their life continued to unfold in beautiful, unexpected ways. The mentorship program became a nonprofit organization, with Gabriel as the director, overseeing expansion to restaurants across the country. They hired staff, developed curriculum, and watched as hundreds of at-risk youth discovered a passion for cooking and a path forward. Gabriel's restaurant empire continued to grow, but he was strategic about it now, opening new locations only when it made sense and always with an eye toward community impact. Each new restaurant incorporated a training program, giving young people opportunities to learn and grow. Iris grew into a bright, curious toddler who loved nothing more than being in the kitchen with her parents. She would stand on a stool beside them, her little hands covered in flour, solemnly stirring bowls and tasting everything. Gabriel and Gabriel would exchange amused looks over her head, both of them delighted by her enthusiasm. When Iris was 3, Gabriel approached him with another surprise. "I think we should have another baby." They were in bed, Iris finally asleep after an evening of energetic play. Gabriel turned to face his wife. Really, I love being a mom, I love watching you be a dad, and I think Iris would be a great big sister. What do you think?" Gabriel pulled her close. "I think that sounds perfect." Their son, Isaac, was born when Iris was 4, and he was as mellow as his sister was energetic. Gabriel joked that Isaac had inherited his father's calm focus, while Iris had her mother's passionate enthusiasm. Their family felt complete now, and Gabriel couldn't believe how full his life had become. He had built his business from nothing, yes, but this family, this home, these moments of joy and chaos and love, this was his real accomplishment. When Iris started kindergarten, she told her teacher on the first day that she was going to be a chef like her daddy. Gabriel got tears in her eyes when Iris recounted the story at dinner, and Gabriel felt a surge of pride mixed with hope that his daughter would find whatever path made her happy, whether that was cooking or something else entirely. Maya sent them regular updates from New York, where she was now the sous chef at a prestigious restaurant. She was dating a pastry chef and talking about someday opening her own place. Every email she sent included thanks, reminders that she wouldn't be where she was without them. Gabriel's wedding anniversary tradition was to recreate their first meal together at Ember, but to cook it at home, just the two of them. They would get a babysitter for the kids, set up the dining room with candles and flowers, and spend the evening cooking and talking and remembering how they had found each other. On their 5th anniversary, as Gabriel sat across from his wife, watching candlelight play across her face, he raised his glass in a toast. "To the woman who changed my life, twice." She smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had first caught his attention. "To the boy who became the man I was always meant to love." They clinked glasses, and Gabriel thought about the path that had led him here. Every struggle, every hardship, every moment of loneliness had been necessary to bring him to this place, to this woman, to this life. He wouldn't change a single thing. As they ate and talked and laughed together, Gabriel realized that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along. Not success or recognition or wealth, though those had come, but home, belonging, love that was deep and real and lasting. He thought about his 13-year-old self, angry and scared, cooking dinner for his sister in their tiny apartment. He wished he could go back and tell that boy that everything would be okay, that the pain would eventually lead to joy, that the skills he was learning out of necessity would become his passion and his career. But more than that, he wished he could tell him that he would find her. The teacher who would see his potential and nurture it, who would come back into his life at exactly the right moment, who would love him not for what he had accomplished but for who he was, who would build a life with him that was richer and fuller than anything he could have imagined. Gabriel reached across the table and took his wife's hand. "I love you," he said simply. "I love you too," Gabriel replied, squeezing his fingers. And in that moment, in the home they had built together, with their children sleeping upstairs and their whole future stretched out before them, Gabriel Young knew he had everything he would ever need. The scared kid had become a successful man, yes, but more importantly, he had become a husband, a father, a mentor, and a partner in building something meaningful. The restaurants would continue to thrive. The mentorship program would reach more kids. There would be challenges and setbacks, triumphs and failures. But through it all, he would have her by his side, the woman who had believed in him from the beginning, who had taught him that cooking was art and that love was the greatest adventure of all. They finished dinner and moved to the couch, curling up together the way they had on countless evenings before. Outside, the city lights sparkled, and inside, they had created a sanctuary of warmth and love. "Tell me again how we met," Gabriel murmured, her head on his shoulder. Gabriel laughed. "You know the story. I know. But I like hearing you tell it." So he did, recounting the day she had walked into his conference room, how he had recognized her immediately, how everything had changed in that moment. She listened with a contented smile, even though she had heard it dozens of times before, because it was their story, the one they would tell their children and grandchildren someday. The story of how a scared kid and his teacher had found their way back to each other 19 years later, and built a love that would last the rest of their lives. And as Gabriel held his wife close, listening to the sound of her breathing, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest, he knew without a doubt that every moment of his life had been leading him here. To her. To them. To this beautiful, imperfect, absolutely perfect life they had created together. The mentorship program's 10th anniversary gala was held on a warm June evening at Ember. The restaurant had been transformed for the occasion, decorated with photos of the hundreds of students who had participated over the years. Many of them were there in person, now young adults pursuing careers in culinary arts or other fields, all of them wanting to celebrate the program that had changed their trajectories. Gabriel stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Beside him, Gabriel was radiant in a navy dress, her hand resting on his arm in support. 10 years ago, Gabriel began, a remarkable woman walked into my office with an idea that would transform not just the lives of at-risk youth, but my own life as well. Gabriel Young, my wife, my partner, my inspiration, believed that every kid deserved a chance to discover their passion and their potential. She believed in me when I was 13 years old and struggling to survive, and she believed in these students when others had written them off. He gestured to the crowd, to the young people who had come so far. "Look around this room. See the chefs, the teachers, the social workers, the entrepreneurs. Every person here is proof that when you give someone opportunity, support, and belief in their abilities, incredible things happen." Gabriel spoke next, her voice filled with emotion as she thanked the volunteers, the donors, the students themselves for their hard work and dedication. She talked about the importance of mentorship, of community, of never giving up on kids who were fighting to build better lives. When the speeches were done and the celebration was in full swing, Gabriel pulled his wife onto the dance floor. Iris and Isaac were with Sophie for the evening, giving them a rare night to themselves, and Gabriel was determined to make the most of it. "I'm proud of you," he murmured in her ear as they swayed together. "Of us, of everything we have built." "Me too," she said, pulling back to look at him. "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "We're just getting started. There's so much more we can do, so many more kids we can reach. We have years ahead of us to keep building this legacy." Gabriel kissed her, not caring that they were in the middle of a crowded dance floor. "I can't wait to see what the next 10 years bring." And as they danced surrounded by the community they had created, by the lives they had touched and the love they had shared, Gabriel knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. The scared kid who had learned to cook out of necessity had become a man who cooked out of passion, who loved deeply, who used his success to lift others up. But none of it would have meant anything without her. Gabriel Ashford, the teacher who had seen potential in a struggling student, who had become his mentor, his friend, his love, and his wife. She was the one who had always believed in him, who had shown him that success was measured not in dollars but in impact, not in accolades but in the lives touched and the love shared. They had found each other twice, once when he was a boy in need of guidance and again when he was a man in need of love. And together, they had built something beautiful, something lasting, something that would continue to ripple out into the world long after they were gone. As the night wound down and they drove home through the quiet Seattle streets, Gabriel reached over and took his wife's hand, intertwining their fingers the way they had countless times before. She smiled at him in the darkness, and he felt that familiar surge of gratitude and love. Tomorrow they would pick up the kids from Sophie's, return to the beautiful chaos of family life, continue their work with the program, and navigate whatever challenges and joys came their way. But tonight was just for them, a moment to appreciate how far they had come and how lucky they were to have found each other. "I love you," Gabriel said as they pulled into their driveway. "I love you too," Gabriel replied. "Always have, always will." And as they walked into their home hand in hand, ready to face whatever tomorrow brought, Gabriel Young knew he had everything he had ever wanted and more than he had ever dreamed possible. The journey from that scared 13-year-old to this moment had been long and winding, but every step had been worth it to end up here with her, in this life they had built together. Their story wasn't about a CEO reconnecting with his former student, though that was how it had started. It was about two people who found each other at exactly the right moments, who built a love that was deep and true and lasting, who used their gifts to make the world a little better, and who proved that sometimes the most important lessons we learn have nothing to do with recipes or techniques or business strategies. Sometimes the most important lesson is simply this: love transforms everything. It had transformed a lonely, driven businessman into a husband and father. It had transformed a dedicated teacher into a nonprofit director, changing lives on a massive scale. And together, their love had transformed the lives of hundreds of young people, showing them that their circumstances didn't define their potential, that hard work and passion could open doors they never knew existed. As Gabriel locked the door behind them and followed his wife upstairs, he thought about the boy he had been and the man he had become. The journey had been worth every moment, every struggle, every sacrifice. Because it had led him here, to this woman, to this life, to this love that would sustain him for all the years to come. And somewhere, he liked to think his mother was watching, proud of the man her son had become, grateful that he had found someone who loved him the way he deserved to be loved. The scared kid who had cooked mac and cheese for his sister had grown into a man who cooked from the heart, who led with compassion, who loved with everything he had. That was his real legacy. Not the restaurants or the money or the recognition, but the love he had shared, the lives he had touched, and the family he had built with the woman who had always believed in him. From their first meeting in a middle school classroom to this moment, decades later, she had been his guiding light, his inspiration, his home. And as they fell asleep that night, wrapped in each other's arms, Gabriel knew that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together, united by a love that had survived time and circumstance to become something unbreakable, something eternal, something that would last for all the years they had left and beyond. Their story was proof that sometimes the people who change our lives come to us when we least expect it, that second chances are real, and that love, when it's true and deep and built on mutual respect and shared values, can transform everything. From a struggling student to a successful CEO, from a dedicated teacher to a visionary nonprofit director, they had both become more than they ever could have been alone. Together they were unstoppable. Together they were home, and that in the end was everything.